to,
I was out there.
yeah, I didn't come, I was going to eat lunch with my youngest daughter that was in town in Jacksonville. I came for a little while. So, had the two grandbabies from there and.
All right.
All right.
Hold the meeting to order. So it's 6 p.m. Welcome, everyone. It is April 1st, 2025. It is 6 p.m. I will call to order the Keystone Heights Airport Authority monthly meeting. Ask everyone to please stand for prayer and then pledge allegiance.
All right, let's pray.
Pray for us, please.
Father, thank you for another beautiful day. Thank you for another opportunity to just serve our city and our county and our country. And God, thank you for every member that's on this board. Thank you for their insight, for their wisdom. God, I pray that you'd be with us tonight and help us to make good decisions. Help us to just make a difference in our community. So God, thank you for the opportunity to serve. And we ask that you be with us tonight in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Mr. Coon, roll call, please. Here.
Bryant.
Here.
Johnson.
Here. Here.
Saul.
Here.
Jennifer.
Here.
Bernie.
All present and counted for, sir. Oh, sorry, military. I forgot about that. I forgot where I was.
All right. It's good to have Frank Host with us from the Sportsman's Club. He's kind of been a regular attender and appreciate your presence and being here, interest in our board. Any public comments, Mr. Coon? No public comments. Moving on to reports. To the consent agenda. You had received previously by email from Mr. Coon the February 2025 financials. Also, the March 4th Keystone Heights Airport Authority Board meeting minutes, as well as the March 25th Keystone Heights Airport Authority emergency meeting minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve of the minutes.
All right. Have a motion. Do I hear a second? You second? All right. Any questions, any discussions? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving to reports, Mr. Prang, ongoing projects.
Yeah, good evening, members of the board. I've got 4 quick updates. The fencing project on the west side, Service Road, is underway. They started in the middle of last week. They've got most of the fence posts set, and they're working on top rail, and they will start stringing fabric on Friday. So I would say probably by the end of next week, the majority of the fence work will be done. Then they'll turn their attention to the gate installation and tying in out at State Road 100. There's a piece of work that we need electricity, so we're also working with Clay Electric to get their utility poles scheduled on their schedule so they can bring power into the gate location. So, any questions on that? All right. We are designing a bulk storage hangar that the FAA is going to fund. It's going to operate as a community hangar. We've talked about this before. Just wanted to let you know that we're going to be submitting 90% plans and specs to Craig on Friday. We have a 100% target deadline at the end of April. We'll be out to bid in May, and we should have bids ready by your June board meeting so that you can consider the bids, consider an award, and immediately thereafter we'll be ready for you to submit a grant application for that funding.
Where's that one going again?
It's going to be over here, fronts taxiway A. Yes, sir. It will front taxiway A. It's an 80 by 80 hangar. It will be right in this vicinity, behind or just down to the east of Wayne's Retreat, and it'll set behind Mike Potterpow's hangar. But it faces taxiway Alpha. A single connector, an apron area, and an 80 by 80 hangar. Last month we started a task that is a partnership with the Clay Economic Development Corporation. We haven't been on site yet. My folks are doing the type of desktop environmental reviews that can be done, searching state databases. We've got a couple of on-site activities that need to get done in the next 1 to 2 months, including a bat survey, biological assessment, and a cultural resources assessment. So that's ongoing. We're just doing office work and spooling that up. And, the fourth one is the master plan. Our planners are working on a pretty heavy lift to get the airport layout plan up to date. So we've started a lot of that. That's mostly AutoCAD work with, improving the drawing and bringing it up to FAA standards. And then our chief planner, Howard, is working on the inventory section, starting to work on the forecast. I was just talking to Craig earlier about termination of critical aircraft. So Craig's collecting some information. We're looking at all the bird tower data and the forecast that the FAA produces. So no reports yet to distribute on that, but there is work ongoing on the master plan. Did I report on 4 things?
Yes.
Yes.
Any questions for Prang?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prang. We appreciate all that you and AECom are doing on all these projects. The next item is Jim Taylor. As I mentioned, his daughter, I think, is on the verge of childbirth, so he wasn't sure whether he would be here or not. But what I can report to you is that there have been a couple of email exchanges between Mr. Taylor and the firm's attorneys. And Mr. Kuhn will be sending those out to you tomorrow for y'all's review and.
And I sent them out, actually.
You already sent them?
Someone mentioned that they had seen it. I thought-
Were those the
I've seen it.
25 March ones?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think they do that.
Okay, we get the latest one from, well, I guess last week, may have.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, all right, good. So that's basically, Jim might have elaborated on some other things within those emails, but that exchange is ongoing because we're at that level now to where it's not us that are communicating with our tenant, but the attorneys. So, all right, the next item, we're going to move.
Are we going to talk about the firm anymore?
I hadn't planned to.
Okay. So, I'm sorry, I missed the meeting last week, and I was just wondering, so have they responded to?
Well, actually, we are. I apologize. He has a report. for
Okay,
us.
okay.
He has an update for us.
All right, I'll wait.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was some other discussion, but yeah, we have a report.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to ask Ms. Terry to give us a tree farm cost share update on that project.
So we just had an application submitted. Carlton Scott took care of that. He's so good to work with. But anyway, I asked him for just a little more information about what's going to be covered if we're able to successfully, we're given that cost share. And we have mechanical, any kind of mechanical site prep done with equipment or whatever. That one is $150 per acre. Seedlings, $150 per acre, and then planting is $60 per acre. So he said that if we had everything, it would be about $73,000 is what he did, because they'll only cover up to about 250 acres. So 250 is sort of their max. So that's what we're looking at. So we'll just be waiting to find out if we made the cut this time. So hopefully we will.
Okay.
And you can continue to see the results of the other work as you come down the road.
It's working.
It's working, yes.
It's doing its job. All right. And all that correlates with our forestry master plan that we have on file. So, all right, any questions about that for Ms. Hall?
Ike, you got any questions on that? You understand all that?
All right.
I don't have a clue.
All right, so we're going to move on. Mr. Ludwig,
Right.
I have a question first. Is your board member responsibilities, is that more of a comment or is that an action item?
It's, I don't know, what do you mean action item? As
So
far
we
as
need to
something
vote on.
Vote on, no.
All right, can we save that then till the board comments at the bottom?
I'd actually like to just go ahead and do it now. if it's possible there. I don't plan on spending a lot of time on it.
Okay.
It's information that needs to
Go for it.
come out. Basically, what I have to say under that is, as board members, we have a responsibility and a right to talk and communicate with any of our tenants and listen to their concerns. I know after last month's meeting, they got a little excited and heated in here because of the situation that we're dealing with right now with the firm. But I believe it's important to keep communications open, because without communications, everything starts to break down. And when you have one side, where you have two sides not able to talk directly to each other, then you start this little hit and tit for tat and different things, and that doesn't do anybody any good. As a board member, in trying to keep up with the things that are going on through what I see in email world versus what I see in reality world, sometimes seem to be two different things. I think if we could all take the opportunity to sit down and discuss with them, and again, going over there and speaking with them doesn't mean you're going over there and speaking for the airport. You're going over there and you can listen to their concerns. And we should do that with every one of our tenants. They've done their homework in this situation. They've done a tremendous amount, and they're very smart people. There's fault on the side of this airport. And I know in our meeting last month, it was discussed that, we don't need to talk about what happened in the past or whatever. We need to move forward, and we need to yes, we do have to solve the problem. The problem is in front of us now, and it's going to have to get taken care of. But there were also actions in the past, and it clearly shows in the FOIA information. Every one of us in this room, as well as city council and other people, were provided that information, and it's there in black and white. You can start to put together some timelines of information that I think is very pertinent to this situation. And I would just encourage board members to look into that, to fully understand what you're looking at, and to digest it, because I think as we move forward and we're making decisions and we're voting, I believe we need to have informed information that's coming in so we can make informed decisions, correct decisions. When this whole thing kicked off, one of the things that I have said numerous times is that we were never provided the full terms of the lease before we took the vote to go ahead and do the assessment, or not the assessment.
Cease and desist?
No, not the cease and desist, the appraisal.
Oh,
That was very wrong, and that's what started this whole process on our part. We should have had that full term in front of us, that full term to where we could have those discussions before we ever took that vote. And the only thing that we were given at that time was verbal, saying that their lease is fixing to expire and we're going to have to vote to have an appraisal. That's a very big difference in what the actual lease encompasses itself. And it wasn't until 2 months after we took the vote on that appraisal that we actually saw the very first version of the actual lease and what it consisted of. But the information is there in black and white. I just ask board members and city council or anybody else that has that information to set aside friendships, set aside biases, and look at the facts, because the facts are there in black and white. And then decide what you want to do from that point forward. But I think it's very important, and for us as board members, especially for the decisions that we're trying to make to move this airport forward, it needs to be done in a way that we're not setting ourselves up for potential liability issues and possible litigation, because that doesn't do anybody any good. So that's all I have to say on that issue. I'll move my next item unless anybody has any concerns.
I have a response. I totally disagree with you with respect to board members going over there and having a conversation, only because it's now elevated to a point where the attorneys are talking back and forth as our representatives.
Well,
So that's why I disagree. And I don't think it's wise that we do what you suggest at this time.
and all I'll say as far as in response to that is, again, there's nothing that any one of us board members are going to be able to go over there or say or do that's going to change anything They've done their homework. They have all the information there. And there's a long history of it. The history that's being portrayed here, the history goes back. It goes backwards. And that information is very important to this situation.
I hear what you're saying, Mr. Ludwig, but where we are with what we have been told by the FAA and what we have been trying to bring a resolution to, none of that matters. We have 3 items that we have to address: a safety area, a non-aeronautical tenant, a change in use that's got to be addressed, and a fair market value. And all of that required an appraisal to begin with. So that's where we are. And yeah, we could look through reams of paper, okay, it's there. But the resolution is what I've just said, because that's what the FAA has told us that we've got to do. And that's what we're going to do.
And that's understandable. And those will have to be resolved now that it was put in front of the FAA. But before it ever got put in front of the FAA, this board should have reached out to the tenant to say, hey, look, we have some concerns about some things. Let's see what we can do to work on this together. And that's not how it happened.
Well, we're going to move.
Just like this board was not given the information ahead of time, vote for the appraisal, they weren't given the information ahead of time to know what was fixing to be dumped in their lap.
Well, I'm not going to rehash that with you because that's already been discussed. So let's move on.
Do we have any comments? Clarification?
Pardon me?
Do we get any clarification, or is that it?
Briefly,
Okay,
briefly.
okay. So you made a comment that you think because somebody went over to the firm that that's why we're here? That's why we're where we
Not
are?
at all. I didn't say that.
Okay, that's why I wanted clarification. Yeah, I just want to make sure. Because I guess what he opened up with, that I think is a huge issue here, is we are all responsible to listen to the other side. Now, some people's personality doesn't warrant that. I get that. That's on every board. That's just not this board. But the question is, has anybody, including me, done anything that has caused us harm because they went over and talked to the firm? If they did, then this is where we need to discuss that. If not, then it's going to continue because we're not allowed to talk about this other than our board meeting.
Well, Sunshine Law has a lot of restraints.
But not right now. So I think it's wide open.
So, but as I said, where we're at right now
Okay?
with addressing the 3
Okay?
potential non-compliance issues, that's what our focus needs to be on.
But his thing was on board responsibility, and he was 100% correct that we have an obligation to go listen to our tenants and try to work with them and build a bridge. And my question to you, do you feel like that has been jeopardized?
I won't make that call whether it has or hasn't, but here's what I want us to understand. We're at a point now to where it's elevated to where the attorneys are the only ones that are talking back and forth for us. So that's where we are.
That has nothing to do with us as board members, though, that want to build a relationship with our tenants. I hope that's not what you're saying, because that has nothing to do with our relationship with the tenants.
We can still have a relationship with our tenants,
Okay?
but I think we have to be extremely careful in this situation because it's involving a lot of potential legal things. So that's where I think we need to be careful.
Okay, I agree, and let me make one more comment real quick, okay? Positive comment, that I think us as a board and us having an incredible airport manager, okay, that has definitely built bridges in the last 2 or 3 months, has had a great relationship with the firm in the last couple of months, and I think that's what has happened out of all of this, so at least he can go over there and they can come over here and carry on conversations instead of letting it just be through the attorneys. Now, that's going to happen because of where we're at, okay? But I think we need to be careful.
And that has happened because we have had the attorney exchanges And Mr. Kuhn has had conversation with Ms. Hines.
Right.
So that is part of this process that we're trying to work through to come to a resolution.
I'll second that because, and Buck's 100% right. Most positive that we've seen out of this whole thing is the efforts that our managers put forth to win this. Everything that this board's been involved with has just been it's stopped it and put up a brick wall. And it's basically the whole process has slowed down and been impeded. And our airport manager has worked very hard to try to come up with many and multiple solutions of trying to try to make things work. And I commend him on that, and we all should be.
We do.
You know, he's put in a lot of effort, and I know that's not easy. This whole situation is a very technical situation. But yes, I commend him tremendously. And we as a board should be doing the exact same thing, any and everything we can do possible. Because again, this situation didn't just happen overnight. This is a situation that has been in place for many, many years. This board has been, to say that we were unaware of any issues is just, it's not a good excuse. And that's all it is, it's an excuse. It's gone on for too long, and there's been too many people that have seen and had their hands on this thing for it to just to be like, oh, well, we didn't know anything about it. That's just not true. Everybody in here is a very smart person, and board members before us were very smart people. You know, were some bad decisions possibly made back in different times? Possibly, because we can even make bad decisions. But I think we should be doing everything we can to keep communications open and to be pushing and working as hard as we can to try to resolve this situation that works out great for everybody and keep a good relationship with them. They're a very good tenant. My entire first year as a board member, I said it over and over. I never heard one negative thing out of anybody's mouth on this board or at this airport, you know. And I mentioned it last meeting, and so did, I think Buck had brought it up as well. You know, the event that they just held over there for the Southeast Adventure Vehicle Expo, you know, to see the amount of people, possibly 7,000 people that came in for that event, and what I saw when I rode out here that day and saw who all was just in Keystone alone, that were at restaurants, gas stations, because those vehicles stand out. We all know that. Everybody's seen them. You know, these things are major, you know, cool looking off-road vehicles. But to bring in that kind of a boost to our community, because they're hosting that's huge for all of us. And
Sure,
especially in a
welcome,
community like this is what we need. And I guarantee you, if I would have ridden over in the Bradford, I probably would have seen the same thing over there in the city of Stark as well, to see what they, you know, the people that were over there spending their money. So they're a huge asset to us, and I think that it'd be very important and be in our best interest to do everything we possibly can to help this thing and work it out the right way to where we don't end up in litigation.
And that's what we're trying to do.
Let me make one more comment.
No, we're going to move on. Mr. Ludwig,
I
you
have one
want
last-
to talk about your
Thank you.
fire extinguisher inspection?
Just to point out, just to let everybody know, so nobody loses any sleep over there, so I know everybody's waiting. That's just being funny there.
Yeah.
Our annual fire extinguisher inspection, we just conducted it here just recently, and we didn't have any issues. There was a couple little things that had to be replaced here and there and all, but that's not a big issue. Everything looks like it's good and in compliance. And I want to just kind of send kind of a thanks to Jason there with the Latchwood Fire Extinguisher. He's who has been doing this for the last 7 years, and he's a wealth of knowledge. He knows this airport. Things do get cloudy because you see so many places and all that, but he was able to put us on things pretty quick. And then also Randy Farrell, that's with MHD Rockland, that he kind of does their safety. And he was able to help get us through around and navigate all of MHD's facilities so we could get to the extinguishers quick. It's a long day. It's a lot of steps. You'll be worn out at the end of the day, but between having the two of them helping out, it went very well. And we are currently working on improving some location mapping and trying to do a couple things to help improve to where when we have to have access to be able to get quicker access and all to try to shorten the process so it doesn't take a full day. But all in all, everything went good with it. I know there was a couple recommendations about potentially some spares and all, but I think what we have at the moment there, just after some discussions, that one particular issue just recently where it had to be used, I think Jason was able to come out, give them a loaner, replace the other, and then get it back to them. So I think everything's good. So
Good.
Who
Appreciate
did
the
you
time
say
you
did the
spent.
inspection? Who was that?
His name is Jason. He's with the Alachua Fire Extinguisher.
Oh, okay.
Really good guy.
Yeah.
He knows his stuff. He's sharp.
Can I ask a question?
Thank you, Mr. Ludwig, for accompanying them and getting all that done. Yes, sir.
Wondering, does PFAS, PFOA, those issues, is that any effect on our?
We don't have any foam here, so everything we have is your, basically your regular dry chemical extinguishers.
But even in the past, there's no concerns that PFAS, PFOA could be an issue on our,
Just because we don't have any of that stuff here. And I'm familiar with what you're talking about, because like with my department that I work for, we just swapped out into all brand new stuff because of that. So, and I think everybody nationwide has been in the process of doing it.
yeah, a lot of the airports at the Tallahassee meeting that we had were concerned about the possibility of having responsibility, potential for lawsuits of PFAS, PFOA contamination, so I wasn't sure if that could, if we've ever done a study or if we know anything about whether or not that could be an issue for us, but it sounds like.
Yeah, I don't, to my knowledge, we don't have any of that. We don't
Right.
contain any of it.
Yep. All right, thank you, Mr. Ludwig. Mr. Kuhn, give us your latest and greatest information.
So before I get started, Todd from Rockland called me today and said one of their air conditioning units is unserviceable. I guess it was Moody's, which is now area. That's who Rockland chooses to use. They do all the maintenance. Todd said that they've been kind of stringing this unit along for 4 or 5 years, and Birdie's finally said it's time to replace it. He sent me a quote today for $9,300. I told him to go ahead and coordinate the replace. I don't think we have. I guess I was asking the board. It's below our $10,000 threshold. It's one of those items I feel like that you're going to have to do. So if anybody disagrees, I can do it differently. But I just told him to coordinate the replacement and then have Birdie send the invoice to the airport. And Todd did clarify that Rockland does, they are responsible for the year-to-year maintenance, so they pay the service call. I don't know historically what you've done, so.
We had talked about that with the previous airport manager, and I think we lost sight of it, but we were talking about maybe staging the replacement of those over a period of time where it wouldn't hurt so bad. And I think we've lost sight of that, so it.
Well, it sounds reasonable, like it's time to do it, just do it.
Well, and they have, is it over here on this building on the
71,
maintenance
I
hangar?
think so, yes.
Yeah, I think you have to do it. All those units are getting quite
I
aged.
think since they didn't do our static display for the spring fling, that we should make them suffer through that.
So, okay, I just wanted to make sure you were all okay with that.
So-
It is above my threshold, but again, that's more of like an emergency type thing.
Do we need to take a vote on it, or?
Well, it's actually below your limit.
Well, it's below the limit that we need to get a quote, but it's above my personal spending limit.
Right.
But you're not gonna it's up to you guys, whether, however you wanna do a vote or what.
Yeah, let's do a motion. Someone,
Yeah, I'll make a
motion.
motion that we do the funding for the replacement HVAC unit for MHD Rockland, wherever it's located,
Up to $9,300.
up to $9,300.
A second.
all right, motion and a second. Any other questions, discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right,
Today at 11:45, I did get a response from the FAA on my submission. I gotta be careful how I word this. It's not an approval, it's, they find my corrective action plan acceptable. So, I think at this point, the clock has started. I don't know that, I guess that's up for you guys to decide, but nothing's changed. It's what I presented last week. The only difference is, I add some time, to a couple of the steps that Bill said maybe I was too aggressive on the timeline. So I did add that time and, they've accepted it, so. I don't know that any board action needs to take place necessarily.
I don't think we do. I think what we need to
I think that was
just
already done.
state, because we have approved all of that already in the emergency meeting, The NOTAMs that Mr. Kuhn will have to file about the runway will start tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. So I would think April 2nd, then the clock starts at 8 a.m. And then we have that first step within that corrective action plan, and 30 days, I think, was on that one. So we'll start that process now that we've got acceptance from the FAA.
So when you say it's accepted,
I
didn't use the word approved.
well, I think it's just a nuance. I don't think that they can approve something because then they become liable for anything that may happen.
That means,
That is the FAA's terminology.
It says it's acceptable, and we will check in periodically on your progress towards your milestones.
Correct.
And I think they intentionally use acceptable because at any time, in their vernacular, your progress could become unacceptable. And you'd be back, so to speak, to make revisions to your corrective action plan.
okay.
But there were a number of question marks, at least in the document that you sent me. Are they all answered?
I believe so.
So the first one was in lieu of pen and ink ALP change, would FAA agree to document this temporary change via written communications? Is that yes?
I believe so, yes.
So by absence of them specifically requiring the pen and ink change, we believe they've accepted the email correspondence which documents it. And I suggested to Craig earlier today in a conversation that that's the type of issue that the local Orlando office would handle, that we give them until Friday or maybe Monday. And if they don't respond, maybe Craig just checks with a phone call to make sure they're not going to require a formal pen and ink change submission.
And we think it may be because of the short duration, the number of days we're looking at. It would be expensive for AECom to go in and do that temporary ALP revision, just to have it revert back once this process is over. So I
then,
think we're good there.
okay. The other question was notice will be filed when any WIP, is that work in progress? It's taking place in near safety areas. Would the FAA consider allow temporary closure of 1129 for short durations during?
Yeah, I'm not gonna elicit a response from them on that one at this time. That's pretty far down the road.
I think you'd have to assume they find that acceptable. It's not uncommon to have a short-term runway closure for construction.
Okay, yeah, I agree.
So I think we would be following other normalized standards if you had a short-term, couple of day closure.
And that closure would be specifically for construction, not closing for a non-aeronautical activity.
Right.
And it would only be required
Sure.
when they're constructing,
Yeah.
deconstructing inside the RPZ.
And the last question you had was in lieu of pen and ink ALP mod, FAA would agree to document this temporary change via written. I guess that's the same as,
That's their
Yeah.
version
Okay.
back to B2.
okay.
And just for clarification purposes, because this has now is being labeled as being acceptable, it means you'll be able to issue the NOTAM. It will be able to reduce the size of the rating of the runway itself, and reducing the size of the RPZ, which then allows them to utilize their full track.
No,
Correct?
yes, they're not correct. So you're telling them they can operate outside of their lease boundary? I don't see how that's correct.
I think that was a temporary.
It's part of the temporary.
Yeah, I mean, what did we do that for if they can't use the track? Wasn't that the whole purpose of?
Bingo.
Well,
If I could offer, there's a very nuanced point here. It's come up before, but it's so nuanced that in the larger RPZ configuration, I guess you could say there were two problems. There were cars moving through the RPZ. There's also fixed structure,
Right.
the
Right.
embanked track and the supports, the bulkhead that supports that. That's the nuanced piece. Even when there's not cars going around the track, there's still a bulkhead there. So I think I think the board can evaluate. I don't think the FAA would really weigh in on this nuanced question. With the smaller RPZ having been instituted on a temporary basis to be recurring and to be monitored, those things are not inside the RPZ anymore.
So they're good to go.
Right.
No, they're not.
Yeah.
The whole
We need
point
to-
behind this was to eliminate the safety issue on that RPZ line,
Okay?
but that doesn't eliminate going outside their lease boundary.
We've not even talked about that. That's all
the
I
same
can
thing.
say is everything we've done, somebody help me here, is they were in the RPZ zone, which created a safety problem.
That's correct.
Okay, well, now that we're doing all this, there is not a safety problem because they're not in the RPZ. So in my understanding, y'all help me here, they're cleared to go back soon as everything,
But this is all to provide assistance in deconstructing that area that there shouldn't be in.
somebody's gonna have to help me here because we're at a dead still.
Okay, it's a win-win in that we've eliminated temporarily, that's a key term, temporarily,
Correct.
the safety issue.
Exactly.
Bingo.
Exactly.
So they're
The other
good.
win is that the firm can go back and use that northern portion of the track. Because part of this whole process, another step is their reconfiguration to get that northern portion back within their leasehold boundary.
Right.
So it's part of a whole process that we're doing here. And then with that will be then the removal of that safety hazard issue once the runway is reestablished at its current category. But by that time, the FAA will have looked at the reconfiguration plan that we will have to look at and approve and then submit to the FAA along with the 7460-1 form. So that's the process we've got to go through.
Oh, I still don't understand how that changes operating outside of your lease boundary. Because the whole idea is they're supposed to be deconstructing that area that's out there anyway.
And that will occur,
fix, yeah.
but there's a process that we have to go through, as Mr. Kuhn spelled out in the corrective action plan. There are the 7460s, and there's more than, well, we might be able to do it all in one, but those processes have to take place.
And this is also from providing relief for them, because when the board voted for a cease and desist, it completely shut down their operation. Right then, when they still had contracts, when they had people that had already spent money, that had already set up to travel and get their equipment here. And from what I understand, this is also to help that, because, you know, that put them in a very bad position.
Well, technically, let's make sure we're correct. Their whole track wasn't shut down, only that northern portion that was outside their
That's right.
leasehold.
That's right.
In the safety area.
Technically.
That was the biggest issue, was that it was in the safety area, the RPZ. So that's good news. It's a quick response. And again, credit to Craig for following up with the FAA and seeing this through. So we now have an official process that is outlined in that CAP, and that's all going to start tomorrow. All right?
And so is the idea that then by 25 June, the barriers will be removed?
I think it's going to depend, General,
And
on
the
how quick
rate will
the
be-
FAA responds back when this 7460 form gets sent to them for the various types of work that's got to happen. We're going to have to wait for their approval back on that. So we don't know. That's,
What
Well, that's
approval-
got, these
what-
construction has to be done anyway.
it will be.
Yeah, what approval do they have to give? Because we're just meeting their requirement to make that
Right.
place safe.
I'll let Mr. Prang address that.
We're throwing around an acronym, and I'll actually give you the name of it. 7460 is the name of a form. The title of the form is Notice of Proposed Construction. So the tenant needs to develop, I'll call it a reconfiguration plan for their track, and they're going to construct a different track configuration. That has to be approved, just like any other construction on the airport goes through the process of notice of proposed construction. So, in fact, I
But
would
the
say the long
construction is
haul-
actually deconstruction. We're deconstructing the
that
barriers.
Demolition would be considered construction work in this context.
And that's
Because
why,
associated with it is building a new turn or some different turn arrangement on that end of their track to reconnect the pieces.
Even if
on
it's
the
outside of the RPZ, the FAA still has to have approval for that?
Yeah,
Anywhere in the airport, you need approval.
Anywhere in the
for
airport.
construction.
So,
We do it when we build hangars, we do it when we replace lights,
okay.
we do
So
it
then-
for any type of construction.
So the next steps, because we seem to have happen a lot frequently, at least in the last 6 months of my observations, is that we say, this is what needs to be done, and then 6 months later, they tell us that we never told them anything. And so, you know what I mean, that's happened a number of times so far, that they come back and say, well, a year ago, this happened, you never told us that, so is someone communicating clearly with them as to what their responsibilities are at this point and the timeline by which they have to meet them?
Yes, they do have a copy of the corrective action plan. And we are setting up a meeting in the short term with their representatives, whether it be their attorneys or management or whoever that may be. And it will be I assume they have to understand if they have an attorney that's worked for the FAA before.
We keep assuming that
Yeah,
I assume like in February, they understood that
Yeah.
they had to stop doing what they're doing because it's in the RPZ, and then they come back in November and go, you never told us we had to stop this, and it's like, what are you talking about? So anyway, that's why I just want to know, is someone clearly and, sitting down with them, explaining to them, this is what you have to do, this is the timeline it has to be done by, so that, 3 months from now, they're not threatening us with another lawsuit over not telling them what they were supposed to do.
Now, this is just my opinion, but now that we have a proposal that the FAA is accepted, and it's a very clear timeline, I think it's best, much less chance of uncertainty and you didn't tell us about this step or whatever.
I know he's not here tonight, but do you expect Mr. Taylor to distribute this to them or to their legal representation in a formal transmission?
I do, but
Your responsibilities are called out.
I don't know when Jim is going to be available next due to his birth of his grandchild.
This week or coincident with a meeting that's going to start. I do think if I could just, I know I wasn't asked to speak, if you don't mind, but the long pole in this tent is the work the tenant has to do, schedule-wise.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean,
That's why I'm saying they need to know, like,
three
now.
different, I would call them graphic level of detail, not much detail at all. They have to produce engineered drawings to get a water management district permit and submit to the FAA. And to my knowledge, they haven't commenced that process yet. That's not a quick process.
Right.
So some of these other things that the board or Craig has to do will take 30 to 60 days, but the longer pole in here is the tenant submitting a plan, developing a plan,
Right.
submit it to the board first for approval, then to the FAA, then wait for the FAA to comment,
Yeah.
which can be 60 days.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well, that
actually
information a
commence
month
the
and a half
work.
ago.
I'm telling you, I could see 6 months from now, right now, that we're gonna be back in the same place, and they're gonna be accusing us of dragging our feet or not communicating or not telling them what they need to do, even though we're doing this right now. So somehow we just need to make sure.
Well, David Kirk
Documented.
outlined that very succinctly last month or month and a half,
Been a couple of months.
I know,
a couple of months ago, yeah.
no.
So much of what's on here is not new. It's articulated in tabular format.
Right.
And the newer thing is that the FAA did accept it. The compliance branch found this an acceptable voluntary plan. But as they said, they're probably gonna want updates on a monthly basis.
Yeah, as they should.
Right. And that update obviously will be communicated with all of us as well as the firm.
Right.
So, Mr. Kuhn had called me this afternoon. We had a conversation. He shared with me about getting the information from the FAA. We have not sent it to the firm yet because we wanted the board to hear it first. And then he will send, he can send, I think it's okay for him to send a copy of that to,
There's nothing really there to see.
there's not, it's what, one paragraph, two sentences, 3 sentences at the most.
It's an acceptance of my plan.
Right.
And I will check in with you. That is all it is.
So, and again, he can inform them that the NOTAMs will start tomorrow morning. The clock starts tomorrow morning on this process. So we all know what's transpiring.
And they can effectively start using the track tomorrow morning.
They could.
And it's not April Fool's, because tomorrow's April 2nd.
That was good.
All right. Any other items, Mr. Coon?
No, sir.
All right. Madam Mayor, good to have you with us tonight.
Yes, and I'm happy to be here. Appreciate it, and I felt like it was really important for me to come in view of everything that's been going on with the firm. And I'm here really on behalf of the city council as a whole, and to remind all of you that you're all elected members by the city council, and that we also support what David mentioned earlier with the whole request about the FAA. We have to all remember that we are an airport first. We have several tenants here. I know the firm is one of them, but we also have other tenants. I've been part of this situation since the fall of 2023. I knew zero about airports, zero. And I have purposely educated myself on the things that I need to learn about. And every time I've attended, I've learned more. I've been intimately involved in this whole situation. I've taken it upon myself to interview Ms. Hines, over a 2-hour interview on the phone about it, right after this whole thing about the contract being due, even before it was actually expired. And I did all the numbers, I looked at all the details from the time it was signed from 1999 all the way to now to when they took it over in 2012. I also did some exploration on what is a fair market value lease, what's non-aeronautical versus aeronautical space. Learned a lot about that. So like I said, this has been ongoing. There's been a lot of changes with people, just like with council. Every 3 years, you got switches with different people coming on board. And it's really our responsibility to become up to date with every bit of what's been going on. And if that means you got to sit through hours of videos, fortunately we have videos, I prefer watching that than minutes, and educate yourself about what happened historically. This situation has been very complicated. Have we learned anything? Yes. To your point, yes, there were things that happened. We have to move on. We have to learn from our mistakes. I was in corporate business for 26 years and entered many contracts with very, very large customers in the United States and abroad. And the whole thing is, you have to learn, what do we do better next time? And I think this situation, it could have been handled maybe a little differently, but just as of today and as right now, we have a requirement, and it is that we are to follow what the FAA says. And what we're being guided to do by our professionals, Mr. Prang. Our liaisons are basically Craig and Mr. Taylor. And Mr. Prang, if he so chooses to be involved there. You all are board members. As far as communications with them about this subject that has anything to do with it, unless you want to be on a stand in a courtroom and have to testify to what you said or didn't say to whoever, you're putting yourself at risk. I'm just going to tell you that right now. And anything against what has been stated and supported by the FAA, you as a board member are sitting here and saying, well, I don't agree with that. Or whatever you may say to them. And that includes all their employees, not just Ms. Hines. It means anybody connected with this whole situation. What we want to do is we want to make it work for them and us and try to find the best resolution for it. And I think we're on the right track, but we got to be really careful. It's fine to go over there and say, hey, grass is really green today, it looks great. And they can vent and they can say everything they want. But you make a position or you carry information back. I just sat here and watched all of you talking about one thing, and everybody had a different perception of what that meant. As we all know, government is complicated. And I mean, I can read something 5 times and come back with a different response. So this situation, you put yourself at risk, not only for yourself, for the board, and for the city of Keystone Heights. And I just want y'all to remember that. And if y'all ever want to talk to me one-on-one about it, I'd be happy to share with you what I have, the information I've uncovered. And I think that we have bent over backwards to support them. And I'm not saying it hasn't been bumpy, and I can understand why, because a lot of emotions and all that's gotten involved. But I think that we have the best cohesive team of experience and knowledge on this board right now than I've seen in 28 months that I've been there. And I'm really proud of that. And you guys should be proud of yourselves. I mean, I think it's amazing the wealth of knowledge that you guys have to come together to work together. And I'd like to see that continue. Any questions?
Sure. Something I would like just to address. And I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate your input. I don't believe in their situation, their problem is with the FAA. If in the provided FOIA information, that I know you guys received also, because I saw the list of everybody that it went out to, their problem, and the facts they have in their favor is the way the airport handled their whole lease situation. It's not the FAA. They're willing to work and do whatever they have to do to stay in that part.
Like I
It's the way that it was done here, in the history that shows and how it was handled.
Like
And
I
they-
said, we learn from our mistakes and we move forward. They're going into a new lease no matter what. That other lease thing is done.
I don't think that's what's in question, though.
Well, so the whole thing is, there will be a new lease because the fair market value is a huge difference, okay? And we were told that we had to do that when the lease was expiring. And that's why all this transpired. So what we have to do is we move forward with this cap situation, move forward with that, and then we look at the lease situation. And we will also be guided by that with the FAA. And we can have all of our opinions that we want, but at the end of the day, we're an airport. And yes, they're a racetrack, but we're an airport first. And that is what the priority is. And we'd like to keep their business, but they're going to have to go along with what we are going to present to them on that contract. The only other thing I have to say is our council meeting will be next Monday at the Pavilion. And it will be Tony Brown's last night as council member after 30 some odd years. And if anybody can be there, it'd be great if y'all can be there. We're going to try to do some things in the beginning so nobody has to say they don't want to. But anyway, that's all I had. And again, I'm available to talk to any of you one-on-one about any of this, if you have questions.
Mayor, share with us your observation from the spring fling event Saturday.
Oh, wow. It was impressive. When I pulled up, I was like, oh my God, wow, this is really impressive. There's all this stuff is out here. All these cars showed up, had a great showing of vendors. You all had some really amazing volunteers, I think, that helped really to bring it off. And I mean, there was a lot of folks that were there in attendance. So I'm really proud of it. I think that it went really well. And I think the folks had a good time. So it's my first day to wear regular shoes in about 2 months.
Right.
So I was kind of happy to be able to be there for all that. But yeah, it was good.
Did y'all get any kind of a head count over there or
It was hard
estimate?
to tell. People came and went all day long, though. It was
busy
pretty
over there. I
strong
was
all
on
day.
this side over here,
The
but-
band was outstanding. They're called the Horns from Melrose or something like that, I think.
They were good.
And then, of course, the fire department helped, all the stuff for the suds and everything for the kids coming off the back of the fire truck. The kids, I think, really loved that, so it was great. As far as the first time doing something like that, I think it was really a success.
I had some friends that came back by here from the Stark Strawberry Festival.
Yeah,
They said that we had, Rotary had about 50 cars, I think.
50,
cars.
I think it was 54 or something like that.
And they were saying that he only saw 10 at the Strawberry Festival,
Uh-oh.
and that we had more vendors.
We had about 40 or 50 vendors, I think.
There's
Yeah.
40
It's impressive.
vendors.
Yeah.
I talked to several of them, and they did well. They were very happy
Good.
because they had done well. They had more buyers than lookers. So
Well, that's
that's
good.
always a good thing.
Something you're looking at recurring yearly?
Well, I don't know. That's up to Friends of Keystone, because it was really hosted by them as kind of the continuation for the centennial. The city will be doing a thing called Spring Vibes on the 11th. We had started this thing up to have Food Truck Friday with a band in the park 7 times this year, actually, for scheduling. So just trying to bring more events on. But, I don't know. I guess that's up to
I
you
thought
guys.
the coincidence with the air show was fortunate too.
The air show was like,
It was pretty cool.
it was like icing on the cake, really, to me.
Because that wasn't actually intended initially.
It was not an official air show, it was just
Well,
there.
I mean, a competition.
Because it definitely,
Yeah.
the air show definitely drew people in, for sure. And then it's like,
about
oh,
it.
what's going on,
This is
And,
about
I
the
thought it had
fifth
a lot
year.
of nice synergy that, people
Yeah.
walk from over there and watch their.
Yeah.
friends
Sure.
back and-
What a great, this property is just so great to do stuff like that. Oh my gosh, I hadn't really been anything like that was held here like that, but it was great.
Yeah, well,
That contest, though, that's an annual thing. I think this is their 5th year here. I believe it's 5th or 4th.
Yeah.
But the other
Same
thing I
time
would
every
say
year?
about that is even though that was done for the centennial, probably the vendors and the volunteers now, there's a venue here that is open to be creative for other things that may occur.
yeah, I would recommend doing it exactly like we did it this time every year. Make it a spring fling.
And the weather was perfect.
Yeah.
I mean,
So the Rotary Club wants this to be an annual event. because they're using it as a fundraiser to support a lot of the programs that they actually
I mean, literally, they
subsidize.
started out with 4 applications. That's why Dave brought his car. He felt bad for him. And it turned out they had 40 cars plus show up, or 50 cars show up.
Yeah, it was 50.
So, yeah, and that's money for them, for their club, so that's great. So, yeah,
All
I
right.
was impressed. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Board comments, I have a couple there I want to share. Let me remind all of us about ethics training. And we're part of League of Cities. I believe if you go to their website, there is a link there for that. One of the other things in conjunction with that, let me just, because we do have some new board members, but for all of us as a reminder, we need to not be sharing or discussing information or topics that the board would eventually be voting on, because technically by sunshine law, we're not supposed to do that. We have to do that in an open meeting, public meeting like we're having tonight. So just keep that in mind. I want to say special thanks to Scott Fryer. Michael Heater showed up with his Jambulance for the Spring Fling event and his fire truck for the foam. And he was trying to crack open one of our fire hydrants here. And fortunately, he didn't have the right wrench, because had he done that, it would have set off an alarm.
Oh.
And Clay County would have responded, and we get billed for that, is my understanding. So Scott, thank you very much. Scott was able to take him back over behind the fence and fill the tank up. And he was literally shooting out a foam that would fill this room at about 4 feet. In fact, kids would go in it and they would disappear. So they had a huge time. So Scott, thank you so much for doing that. I want to say special thanks to Craig and to Mary. If you remember last month, there was a beautiful Weber grill out here that had been donated to the Friends of Keystone to raise money for all the events that were going on. And they handled raffle tickets for us. And unfortunately, I don't think anybody that bought a raffle ticket here won the grill. I heard that the lady that actually won the grill, she had bought it when we first had the grill down in front of Ace Hardware several months ago. And some of us were down there and we were selling raffle tickets. And interesting story behind that is, so this lady and her husband were there, they win the grill, and she was so elated because her stove had broke the week before. And, you know, they were just trying to figure out what are we going to cook on? So anyway, it's kind of a cool thing. One other thing, if you need to meet with Craig, I want to encourage you, actually more encourage, I want to require that you call him and set up a meeting, set up a time, set up a date. Craig has a very, very busy schedule. There's a lot of day-to-day things that he has to get done. Now on top of that, Mr. Prang, with the projects that he just gave us, these updates with the fence and with the bulk hanger, there's going to be even more involvement with Craig being tied to that, because he's going to be getting invoices in, he's got to approve those, look over them, then he's got to do all the paperwork to file those with FDOT or FAA for reimbursement. And that's really important to us financially. So that takes time. So I'm just going to ask all of us, and I'm pointing fingers back to myself. If you have something you need to talk with him about, call him, make an appointment, and then come in and see him. And try to keep it short. All right, let's just don't camp out in there. Keep it short. So that's all the comments I had. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Do you want to talk about the launch pad?
Yeah, you want to share it, or?
Well, I think you had a little more interactions with the folks than I did, but, you know, I can kind of give a summary overview.
So on Monday, General Eifert and I went over to Live Oak to a beautiful facility, Camp Weed. Maybe some of you have heard of that place, but has several conference centers.
Camp Weed?
Camp Weed outside of Live Oak.
Oh, trust me, I didn't want to go either.
Pardon me? Yeah.
Can't wait.
Anyway.
Okay. Just
Get
asking.
any urinalysis
Okay,
testing or
okay.
anything. So.
The event was actually scheduled and headed by the Swanee Economic Development Corporation. And the main presenter there was Space Florida. They came in and provided information about the Space Florida Academy, which is something that they have in several schools. Unfortunately, they're not in Bradford or Clay right now, but we ask, okay, how do you go about getting those schools in this program? They do a variety of things, certifications, they work with technical colleges, and they also work with a lot of the high schools and some of the, just other academia or academics that are involved in a variety of things. It's not just aviation, but it's a lot of other programs that welders, for example, forklift operators, there are a couple of them, medical. So this whole process or presentation was around two things. It was around the school system, and there were, I don't know what,
About
6, 8 superintendents from different counties that were there. And in fact, one of the superintendents is for Putnam County. He was actually asked to stand up and talk about the program that Space Florida Academy has with the Putnam school system, and how that he called out the Keystone Airport. We're sitting over there and he points to us and said, hey, we really appreciate Keystone Airport and Distinguished Flyers for having their students come over and fly here at the airport. So it was a good, compliment to the airport. So it dealt a lot with the school system and how that can really come to play. And they provide just everything just to support these schools. So, we met with a young lady afterwards that is going to help us. We're going to set up a meeting with some stakeholders here and have her come in and just share with them, hey, here's what we provide, here's how you get started, here's how we help. The flip side of that was the economic development. It was really interesting about that Florida is now predominantly a space type industry state. And they were talking about all the companies along the Space Coast, large companies, but they depend on smaller companies for component parts. And one of the most interesting statistics that she gave, she asked the question, she says, so how many of you tell me what is the major export for the state of Kentucky? It's not bourbon.
Yeah.
It's actually space-related component parts. There are multiple companies in the state of Kentucky that specialize in supporting these larger companies on the Space Coast with all of these components and parts that they need. And so she was saying to us, she said, to all the economic development, Amber Shepard with the Northeast Florida Economic Development Corporation was there. And she was sharing that, so here's what you have to do. We talked to this lady, Michelle, afterwards, and she said, you've got to go to these shows because there are all of these companies there. And she gave an example of the Paris Air Show, and I would have never guessed about the importance of that because that's typically military and all of the Deltas and American Airlines.
Lockheed Martin.
Yeah,
Right.
Lockheed, Boeing.
Category.
But she was saying that there's just hundreds of these other companies that are at that show. And they're looking a lot of times for a way to move into the US to market their product. So again, that's something else that she was going to share when we get her here for a meeting. That's kind of what I gleaned from it. General.
No, I think that was the big things. It was primarily addressing what are they looking to build a workforce that's space savvy. And the criteria, they had like 560 different criteria of what they're looking for in their workforce of the future. And And then they break down those criteria or capabilities into, how do we train them? How do we do it in the schools and the technical colleges and all the different, things that could especially help rural Florida, not just having to be in Melbourne to, have immediate access to the spaceport. But as you mentioned, with these component manufacturing companies, you build a widget, you can do it in Stark just as easily as you can do it in Cocoa Beach. It's just having the environment and the workforce and the economic foresight to be able to prepare yourselves. So that was interesting. I didn't necessarily take anything away from it specifically for Keystone Heights Airport in terms of things we need to do or think about, but I think it's just kind of continuing to have that open mind and aperture on what might be available to us, especially if it's aeronautical connected, which I don't know necessarily whether every component manufacturer would be aeronautical connected as the FAA might see it, but some of them might be, and that could be another avenue for us to potentially grow the Keystone Airport. So that was kind of the big things I took away from there.
I thought it was a really good program that got presented. The only other thing is with respect to our appropriations request. Charlie has been in Tallahassee a lot. We did find out that from our representatives, our senator, and the committee chair over transportation that will also oversee this appropriations request have all been favorable about it. While we were up there for Rule Days, we did find out that the water sewer project is going to be a completely different approach. It's got to be, with the way things are set up now, a multi-year type project for a funding source. So I did share with the mayor earlier that we got an email from Liberty Partners, it's a lobbyist group in Tallahassee, that the Senate and the House have presented their proposed budget for consideration. Both were down $4 billion probably a piece. So again, we know what that ripple effect is down line for us. May be difficult on some funding levels. The good thing is that we do have our 5-year plan. We've shared that with you before. We meet every year with the FAA and FDOT for construction projects. So 2025 through 2030 right now, we're looking at a lot of projects that total up to $14.9 million. So we've been told that because that's already on the books, that feel pretty confident that those fundings will be there. So so that's the latest we've heard on our appropriations request. If it makes it through committee, then the next level is, it will be a part of the budget, and then it's the governor then will review that and take whatever action. Hopefully his red veto pen doesn't hit that project. So that's what we're hoping for anyway.
One way around that might be to not allow him to fly the jet in here and make him drive from Tallahassee, and then he'll be stuck out there in traffic waiting to turn in.
Just real quick, week after next, some of us here at the airport are going to be participating in the junior senior high school annual, I guess it's a career field trip, I think is what it is. So, some folks at Rockland and some other folks who are going to be talking about aviation, airplanes, aviation careers. We've got a little bigger crowd that's volunteered to help show the airplane. We've got a home built seaplane, a couple others. So
Is that just one school or several schools?
that is the Keystone Junior and Senior High School,
What's the date?
the 14th and 15th.
14 April.
So the junior hires are coming out on the 14th and the senior high. CTE students are coming out on the 15th.
CTE is continuing technical.
It's career technical ed.
Career
Yeah.
technical ed, yep.
And so you guys just take them like on a static display, or you actually?
Correct, static display, yeah.
Not giving flights, huh?
All right, any other comments? All right, we've completed our agenda. We are adjourned at 7:09. Sorry. 9 minutes over, Terry.
All right.